Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, another Friday, and that means another episode of your favorite podcast on Volkswagens, Let's Talk Dubs. Often imitated, but never duplicated. There have been many people come and try to take me down, but it hasn't happened yet. So we'll see those guys at 256 episodes like this episode here. Since it's been around since 2018. And don't forget your favorite podcast. Share it with your friends, all your VW buddies. Click and share on whatever device you're listening to. Copy and paste this in your group chats and text with all your boys. Share it on Facebook. Share it any place you can, because this is the greatest, latest place to get all your up-to-date VW content. So make sure you share, you like, you subscribe, and go check out our YouTube channel also. But we're kicking off this week with a podcast with Clint Cox. And Clint Cox is a guy where his name may be familiar if you're in the drag racing scene. He's the guy, the promoter that puts on Texas versus the World. So that was a big drag race, took place last September. One of the biggest drag turnouts. A lot of people showed up that hadn't been on this drag scene in a while. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about, obviously, his VW history, how he got into it, and how the drag racing scene looks today. There's lots of announcements recently of other drag races and whatnot that are going to be taking place. So we're going to get more into that. But don't forget, if you like the podcast, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe, and purchase from those that support your favorite podcast. That's VW Trends Magazine. Go subscribe today at VWTrendsMagazine.com. And Ross Wolf, purveyors of speed and performance, manufacturers of high-quality aftermarket parts made for enthusiasts by enthusiasts. So go check those guys out today at rosswolf.com. Now, let's talk about Clint. From humble beginnings, simple street racing, to group racing with a bunch of his buddies, to eventually starting drag racing stuff over there at XRP Raceway over there in Texas. So it's a great story, and anybody can set up an event. This is proof for it. And you put your heart and soul into it, and it'll become successful. So without any further ado, guys, let's get into it this week. Texas versus the World with Clint Cox on Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like.
Okay, everybody. So on today's show, I've got Clint Cox here, and he's out of Fort Worth, Texas, and he is the promoter that puts on the event Texas versus the World, which has been one of the premier drag racing events in the country. Big turnout last year, tons of cars, and we're going to get into a lot of those details. First, Clint, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Hey, so we're going to get into Texas versus the World, how that started, all that stuff that comes together. But the way we always start the podcast is, what's your VW story and how did you get into Volkswagens?
Some would say you could blame my dad. I say, I thank my dad for being into it. He's had Volkswagens my entire life. So I grew up going to bug-ins here in Texas at the Texas Motorplex in Ennis, and going to all the local shows. He had a show car when I was really young, and then he kind of got more into like swap meet stuff and off-road racing. He had a full body off-road race car, Baja, and raced some buggies and stuff. And so that was kind of my background. And then I didn't really, I bought my first car through, saving up Christmas and birthday money and that kind of stuff, and mowing yards and whatnot, and bought my first car at 10 years old, and it was a 64 bug.
Yeah.
And it kind of just sat forever. And then, when I got to driving age, I was dumb, and I was like, hey, I'd rather have a truck for my first car. So my dad was like, well, I'll gladly buy the car back from you for what you paid, and I'll sell you this truck. So we kept the car for a while, and then, by the time we got rid of it was about the time I was like, hey, these cars are pretty cool. I kind of wouldn't mind having one, which was, kind of crappy timing because we just got rid of it.
Yeah.
So then we found some cars in a wrecking yard in Kansas, me and my brother. We had bought a bunch of cars out of there, and I kind of fell in love with one. It was a indigo blue 60 semaphore car, total rust bucket, pile of junk. Loaded it with a big heavy equipment forklift out of this wrecking yard. And I was dead set on building it. So, I brought it home. We pulled the body off, had to fix a bunch of rust, I did the whole floor pan, the whole, your typical patina stuff, build the whole chassis as a show car, and then,
right.
Throw the body back on with good interior and stuff. And then I drove that for years and years. And it went through different stages, raised up a little, lowered down real low, kind of at one point, kind of like a pro street look. And we just did car shows, we drank a bunch of beer and hung out. We would go to swap meets and car shows, and I never was really into the drag racing because my dad wasn't, he knew some of the drag racer guys, but he was never into it. So I never was into it. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got into them.
And how do you start getting into racing?
So as lame as it is, the whole Street Outlaw, when that thing first started, they were doing, like real street racing, and they had their list, and so all our car club, we would just goof around, and my dad lives on the service road of a highway out north of town. And so we'd have meetings up at his house, and we would just drag race in front of the house. We all had slow cars, but whoever was the fastest was number one,
Yeah.
And so then everybody kind of started putting little tweaks on their car and trying to make it a little faster. And I would build a little bit bigger motor. And we kept doing this until it was like, this is dumb. Why don't we actually try to drag race?
Yeah.
Because there was a pretty good drag race scene here for years. The Texas Volkswagen Drag Racing Association ran from like 79 or 80 up until around, I'd say, early 2000s. It really fell off. It just totally died.
And what was the cause of that?
There was a couple different things. I think some of the guys got older, so they just lost interest. And then everything they did here was all bracket racing. So there was the big delay box debate, and some of the guys got delay boxes and some of the guys didn't, couldn't afford it or whatever. And it kind of caused a rift between the whole group, and it just kind of stopped as car counts, dwindled, with some people not wanting to go the delay box route.
Right.
So then it sat dormant forever, and then when me and my buddy Chris kind of decided, like, hey, let's try to figure out how to do a drag race, I'm like, well, these guys already had an established name. So I reached out to everybody that I knew that had been a president of that association at some point, and talked to all of them separately and said, hey, this is kind of what we want to do. We really want to drag race. That name is already established. What do y'all think? Do you care? Do you have any say one way or the other? And they all basically did not care, or they did care. My bad. They were all for it. Yes, please do that. We need this. Let's get that going. I'm on the phone doing a podcast. So they were like, yeah, let's do it. If you need some help, let us know. I'm like, all right. So we kind of came up with some basic rules, and we were going to do, try to have a little event at the local track here. And it took off. We did a street class and what we called a pro class. And
now what's the difference? Because a lot of times what really makes things tough for racing is sometimes with Volkswagens, you end up having 50 different classes. You know what I mean?
Right. And so I had seen that in the West Coast, tons of classes, tons of cars, but only a handful of cars in each class. So we were trying to figure out what's the easiest way to get the most cars, to where, like, if you had a Volkswagen, you could just come race with us.
Yeah.
And so we came up with we called it street class, and basically it was like, no wheelie bars, it had to be on DOT tires. And no delay boxes, no clutch management or the clutch release, none of that kind of stuff. So basically just any kind of car, water cooled or air cooled. And then the Pro was more like your dedicated race cars, quicker, slicks, wheelie bars, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Still no delay boxes, but more the dedicated race car guys. And so I talked to the local track, and he was like, yeah, cool, we'll do it on a Sunday because that's our dead day, and I'm like, hey, we may have 7 cars, we may have 25, I have no idea. This is our first time. So we got a few sponsors, just local people, they were like, hey, I'll throw in some money.
Right.
And we ended up having 53 cars total.
Wow.
And it paid $1,000 to win each class.
That's not bad.
And then I think second was like $600, and then I paid semis and quarters, I think. So yeah, I mean it was pretty cool, and then everybody was fired up.
Yeah.
They're like, holy crap, we have to do this again. We tried to do there were some guys in East Texas, they did a series at a track out there and ran, and we averaged out there probably 25 or 30 cars, a month, and it was a point series. And then I did another event. We blended it in with a V8 event, I just kind of tagged onto it. And we had like 75 cars show up to that one. And I think that one we added I want to say we added Pro Stocks to that one, and Jason Pointer ran that part.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it just kind of went from there. Our whole goal really was to get back to that bug in, right, where you could add the car show and the swap meet,
Yeah.
and everybody come out, because that's what I grew up doing, and that was my childhood memory. I'm like, we're there, because in Texas, car shows are everywhere, and people will go because they love to show off their car. And their swap meets are always full. So I know that part's easy. Getting the people to come out and drag race, that was the hard part, because I'm like, I don't even know anybody that does drag racing. So once we kind of established that car count and a little bit of a following, we were able to do, and we called it the Texas Bug-In. And we had, the same thing. We call it Outlaw. So it was basically Pro Stocks and turbo cars, whatever, just a heads up class. But that race, we had like 93 cars at.
And that was and that was the last one that you did, was 93 cars?
No, that was in 21.
So you started this.
So we had a couple more. Yeah, and then so
what was the first year? What was the first year you guys did this?
So we did it March, I want to say it was 14th, 2020. So literally the next day, the county closed the racetrack and the whole world shut down.
Oh, wow.
So after we were on this huge high from this first event, and everybody's pumped and everybody wants a drag race, well, sorry, because there's no drag strips and everybody has to stay home. We just get to look at pictures from last weekend. So 2 or 3 years, we're doing 1 or 2 of big events and still doing like a summer point series to keep that car count steady. And then, me and Jason got to talking, and he was like, hey, I've been working on some sponsors, and I kind of want to do like a Pro Stock Nationals. And I was like, all right, well, I already have this huge group of bracket racers, and the car show part, they're car show people. And not to take anything away from that, I'm just not a car show guy.
Right.
I just like to cruise my bug, typically. But I said, all right, let's do it. We'll come up with a cool name, and we'll have a huge payout, and we'll have a Pro Stock Nationals. So that's kind of how that Texas versus the World came about. because we're sitting around like trying to think of something clever, like what's going to get people's attention and make them want to drive to Texas when you're already racing pretty consistently on the East Coast.
Right.
You've got a huge following on the West Coast, and nothing in the middle. Like, who wants to come to Texas? We've only been doing this for a little while. So that's how we came up with the Texas versus the world, because it was funny to us. Like, we know that Texas probably doesn't have the fastest cars in the country.
Yeah.
Definitely not the world. But Texas already has that reputation of being pretty arrogant, and pretty proud of our state. So we're like, all right, Texas versus the world. Well, when we announced that, it just took off, because everybody's like, what? You're calling out the whole world? You think y'all are that cool? And we're like, I don't know, but here we go. We're going to try it. And it was a huge success.
How many cars showed up?
So our race car count, I want to say, was somewhere just shy of 140.
Wow.
It was like in the 135, 137 range. And then, obviously I put so much emphasis on it being a drag race.
Sure.
That I don't want to say I left the car show guys out, but I didn't put a whole lot of effort into promoting that. Mm-hmm. So that side kind of slacked. I think there was probably 175 show cars, which is still huge.
Yeah, it's still a lot of cars.
And so, like, at the bug end, I think there was 250.
Yeah. Or
close, somewhere between 250 and 300. So 175, I was like, I know we can do better than that. But I was pumped. I'm like, it was cool. It looked good. The swap meet was great. We did I had Power Wheels racing for the kids. So, like, we got up there, and the guy who, runs the starter, that runs the tree, he got up there. We let the kids stage and then race to the 60-foot.
Nice.
And that was kind of cool. We gave him a big check and a little trophy and stuff.
And so, when you decided to put this on, like you start out doing little drag races here and there, when you're putting this on, I mean, from your standpoint, especially being somewhat new to drag racing and seeing all the different classes and the simplification of drag racing, right? Power adders, no power adders, full race car or street driven race car. How many classes, what do you feel from your standpoint of racing was the most? Because the problem is everybody's got to race. And if everybody races, no matter how fast their car is, they're gonna have a good time.
Right. So the problem is everybody, like, from the West Coast, has a dedicated class, and so that's what they're used to. And I already had this mindset of, like, just bring your car and we have a class for it. But that's my simpleton way of thinking. Like, you can always bracket race it. Well, not everybody likes to bracket race. I mean, the more I get into it, the less I want to bracket race. I want to run heads up too. So I understand that now. But when we started that, like, we knew we wanted to have the pro stock class, and we knew we wanted to have what we call outlaw, which is basically a VW, a bodied car, VW bodied, door slammer, rear engine air cooled. Any power adder, any fuel, any size tire, whatever you want to do there is fine, as long as it's rear engine air cooled and VW bodied.
Right.
So we knew we had those two classes. Well, there's a lot of guys, like, I'll use Tom Kenny, for instance, because his car, like, it's not a, low 5-second car.
Right.
And I say 5 because we run all 8th mile here.
Uh-huh.
But he's like, hey, okay, that's your rules. That's cool. I'm going to come because I want to support this and see, how big we can make it. So he came down and raced in that outlaw class. Now, he was outgunned in that class. He's still on a 6-inch tire because he's used to racing that pro class in the Volks group, where if you have a power adder, you're on a 6-inch slick.
Right.
So it was like a whole, it was weird for some of the guys, and now looking at that, now that I can take a step back and see, okay, there's some things that we can change, so that deal, we had our ladies, which is just, obviously it's kind of like the powder puff class,
Right.
but it's just a bracket class. So I allow water cooled or air cooled cars. You just have to be a chick.
Yeah.
And then we had our street bracket and then the pro bracket, which was the same two classes we've been running forever. And then we had super stock, which is like the sort of like pro stock, right? But it's 12 pounds per cubic inch instead of 9. And I think they have some other kind of like, it has to be a pan based car and that, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is like what David Stark runs.
And now,
and he came out and raced.
And so with guys coming out from West Coast and East Coast and all these different drag racing associations, when you guys did Texas versus the world, how many classes did it break down into?
I had the ladies, street, pro, super stock, pro stock, outlaw, and then we had what we called extreme class, which was like for guys like Johnny O that now has a Volkswagen bodied car, but has a different kind of power plant.
Right.
And then, like we had a fastback that's it's still Volkswagen. It's a Volkswagen motor, but it's a VR6 in the front and it has like a 2-speed power glide, So I'm like, well, the outlaw guys didn't want to race him because obviously it doesn't fit those rules. So we put him in that extreme VW class. And that's that I feel like is a class that gets overlooked. Those guys with the different engine combination.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of like the bastard of the Volkswagen world, right? Like people get mad at them, but I'm like, dude, they're Volkswagen people that are tired of spending 30, 40, 50 grand on a motor when they could spend $8,000 on a motor and go faster,
Right. They want to have a little more, see what they could do to have a little more reliability with their power, because obviously, with Volkswagens, if you're using, original VW parts, you're talking about, taking technology that's, 50 years old,
right,
and trying to squeeze that into the maximum amount of power, which then starts to wear out its reliability. And then you have to start just going full aftermarket for everything. And then when you're, buying $1,500 sets of rods, it gets kind of pricey,
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, so for our next one, I still want to have our outlaw pro stock class, and we're doing something a little bit different for the guys that don't quite meet that outlaw speed,
And what was the outlaw class running?
Well, Eric Calabrese came and he ran that class, and I think the fastest time he ran was like his first or second run down the track, and it went like 5:35 at 140 something miles an hour.
Huh.
And then, up to probably 6:0 probably.
So it's everything from low 5s to 6 seconds, which any mistake could cost you the race.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could win or lose it on the tree or miss a shift or whatever. But yeah, I mean, they're fast cars. And then, the pro stocks are those guys are crazy anyway. Those high strung.
Now, what the
10,000 RPM naturally aspirated.
What did the VR6 car run?
I think he ran like 5:49 or something like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got it set up. They've got that program figured out. And I think that car could go faster than that. I don't even know if they had it turned up all the way.
Yeah. And so with all the cars turning out, I mean, it was a massive turnout, more than what you guys had thought. Do you guys have another one planned for this year coming up?
Yes, September 13th and 14th.
So September 13th and 14th this year.
And it's on Facebook, the event page is Texas versus the World 1.5. And that's just because I didn't have any catchy name to come up with, when I made the event thing. But 1.5 worked for me for now because my ultimate goal is to make 25 just astronomical.
Yeah. No, I think I like the premise behind it. And so now when you guys are doing the event, it's a single day event.
It's a 2-day event. So Friday night we did a gambler's bracket race. So any class, any car, as long as it's Volkswagen.
So last year was just one night then, or was one day last year?
Well, it was supposed to be, and then we had so many people coming from out of state that we decided to run one round of qualifying for all the heads up classes on Friday night, and then we did that gambler's bracket race, which was pretty cool. I mean, we also allowed V8 cars that night.
So what's the gambler's bracket race? Just a bracket race, wide open, anything goes. Just
anything goes. Yeah, yep. Just a dial-in class.
And did a VW win that?
Yeah. Well, that one was a VW only class, and then we also had another group, the local group that has a class called Slow Street, which is just basically, your everyday type street cars that are, mid 7-second cars. They do a random draw index and then they race that. So we had them, and then there was some test and tune and grudge racing Friday night. So it was packed Friday night. And me and Jason are looking at each other like, holy moly, this is crazy. I never expected this. Driving through the pits on the golf cart Friday night, because I'm not racing my car Friday night.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to take it all in. So we're driving through the pits, and the cars that you're seeing, it was like cars that I have seen in hot VWs my whole life and have never laid eyes on them. Like the Red Baron car and, some of those pro stock cars that come from the East Coast that I've never seen before. Aaron Brown with his wild paint scheme with the Bulldog and all. I mean, just these cars that I've seen all over YouTube and Facebook and hot VWs, and they're here at the event that we put on, and I was just ear to ear grins. I couldn't have been happier.
Nice. And then the feedback you got from the people that were there.
Everybody seemed to like it. I mean, first of all, the facility, Extreme Raceway Park, is like, it's got to be one of the nicest facilities in the country. I mean, the whole pits are concrete, shower, everything is super nice, and they keep the track super dialed in. So that was the first thing everybody said was, wow, this track is incredible. This facility is great. But then the way everything ran, it ran pretty smooth. And I was, very happy about that. There wasn't too much wait time between classes. Everything ran pretty good. And overall, I didn't hear any negativity.
So you think you'll have a pretty good turnout this year then, you're thinking?
I hope so.
Yeah. And what was the payouts on each class?
So pro stock, the winner got $7,500, I think.
Holy cow.
Out, and then, that was a $15,000 total purse. So, he paid shit. I think everybody got paid in that class. Outlaw, I want to say, was around 5,000 to win. And then same thing, we paid back in that class. And then the bracket classes were like 3,000 to win. The lady class was like 1,000, I think. Overall, we paid out over 40 grand.
Wow, that's huge.
And it was, we were sweating it, like hoping that the turnout was good and the people would come and watch. Cause as any promoter will tell you, like, the people that come through the gate, that pay back the cost of renting the track and all the stuff that comes with it,
Well, and the big thing with doing these events, I put on my one crazy weekend here in Vegas, and it's just, you put the event on because you love the hobby so much and you want to see something in your own city that does something good. And then you're sweating it the whole time. No matter even how much pre-registration stuff you get, you're still sweating it, hoping that people turn up and that you get enough people and cars. And everything in between.
Well, not only that, but like Texas has the weirdest weather, right? So we plan this event a year in advance, and people start paying, pre-registration, and we pay to rent the track, and then they're like, okay, you're locked in, and you basically just cross your fingers that the weather doesn't suck.
Yeah, I mean, everything from wind to rain to anything else that gets you.
Yeah, because Friday, like when I showed up at the track, I took the day off work Friday. When I showed up at the track at like 10 in the morning, it was pouring down rain.
Oh, yeah, that's terrible.
And then, so I was like just sitting in Jason's motorhome looking out the windshield like, oh my God. And it cleared up, and the weekend, the weather couldn't have been better. Like everything about the event just went perfectly, I think.
And now with your particular car, you didn't run your car at all the weekend?
I did pretty terrible.
What's your car? What's your car run?
So my car is my motor is built for turbo.
Uh-huh.
And I wasn't running a turbo. I had smaller carburetors on it, so it runs really crappy right now. Like currently, it's finally being upgraded. So I'm putting all the Haltech and blow through turbo and all that. So my goal is high sixes, low sevens, full street car, full weight, bumpers, everything. Right now it runs like high eights, low nines. Just
right.
Naturally aspirated. It runs crappy.
Yeah.
Then it went red in all three classes that I entered. So
you were a little excited. It's tough, man. I
mean,
you got,
which is cool too, because it'd be cool to win the event and make a bunch of money. But it was also cool to go out and then get to just watch all the racing because, getting to see those outlaw cars run was like, I mean, that was a dream come true for me,
Sure. Now, what'd you guys have spectator-wise? Would you have some full stands or what?
Yeah, it wasn't bad. So the way we did the day, because the car show and swap meet was only one day, and we opened the gates, I want to say at like 10, and did the car show and swap meet stuff early, and then did the awards for the car show, and immediately did the national anthem, and then started drag racing.
Oh, nice.
So everybody that was there from the car show just kind of came over and watched the races. Because when you're doing it and you have a car show and the drag racing at the same time, the car show guys are like, well, I don't want to leave my car, and I don't, the swap meet people, they don't want to leave. So we let all that kind of finish, and then we start racing. Kind of makes for a late night sometimes, but it's cool that everybody gets to be there and watch it. Overall through the gate, I think we had like 3,000 people.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. What's the VW scene like, the street scene like in Texas over there in Fort Worth area?
As far as like just clubs and
VWs
and cruising cars, not bad. Because Dallas is right next door, so Dallas and Fort Worth combined has a pretty big scene. There's a lot of car clubs. When there's an event, everybody shows up. But then, also we had people coming in to show from Houston and Austin and San Antonio and, surrounding states. And then, like the drag racing, they were from obviously, as far north as Oregon. That's where the Marvins came from.
Yeah.
And then so all up and down California, and then Vegas. No, is that right? That's where Aaron Brown's from, right? Las Vegas.
Aaron Brown. I don't think he could be. I don't know. I don't follow drag racing a ton, but I don't recall.
His car is the black and yellow one that was on the cover of Hot VW's last year. I think he's from Vegas. But anyway, then we had cars from Arizona, New Jersey.
Who came down from the East Coast?
What did it say? I cannot remember his name. The car on the side said Big Nasty. on this window. It's blue. It's a blue car, white flames. But then the Pelicans, Ryan and why can I not think of the other one? Ryan. It's a father and son. They came over, and they're from Georgia, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we had some East Coast. We had one bracket guy come down from, I want to say like Pennsylvania or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, the Currys from Ohio, Warren Skaggs. I mean, there was just.
So you guys you guys basically had everything East Coast, West Coast, Midwest,
and everything in between.
Everybody from all over.
Yeah. Ryan. Oh wow, I can't think of his last name. Anyway, from Colorado, two of the guys came down from Denver in the Outlaw car. Ryan McBride and Jim Grant from Denver.
Nice.
They both have Outlaw cars. So yeah, it was well represented across the country, I think. And then a lot of cars from Mexico, a ton of them.
Oh, really?
Like they brought like the Grillos racing team, and then there was another racing team, but all of them came together. They probably had 8 or 9 race cars.
Really? From Mexico, huh?
Oh my God, their pit, dude, was the funnest. Like they brought up a smoker and had like full on barbecue, full on shindig every night. I mean, they had the most fun probably. Them and the Marvins. And like one couple drove their bug from Monterrey, Mexico. They drove it together, drove all the way up from Monterrey, Mexico, which is like 22 hours. Drag raced it in 2 separate classes and then drove it home.
Wow. What kind of times were those guys running? They run something
it was a pretty stock late model bug. I think it was like a high 11, low 12 second 8th mile car.
Now, what do you do? Do you guys have like you guys don't have like a real street class? I mean, the real street class here, I think, has like 6 cars that run it. You know what I mean?
Right. No, there's not like a real big following for that here. So people who have, like nobody's that dedicated as far as drag racing a street car.
Right.
You know, you'll have guys like me and a couple of my buddies that have like quicker street cars. But most of our street class is, you know, it'll be anywhere from a really high 7, low 8 to like 14 seconds in the 8th mile.
And what is somebody that like, let's say like my bug, right? Slicks. It's got, I think it's got 8-inch slicks on it, maybe 6-inch. I don't know. I just dusted it off and raced it in Medford.
Right.
But it's like, you know, I don't even think my car's got a cage in it. Maybe I don't think it does, but it's like a home built drag car, you know, fiberglass front end.
Yeah.
You know, but everything else. And so it's got some Lexan windows. What class would that car run in?
That would be like a pro bracket class.
So pro bracket.
And so it's still a dial in class, you know, it's just allow slicks and wheelie bars and that kind of stuff. Which for this year, I think I'm going to change those classes to just ET based and just allow slicks or whatever in either class.
Yeah.
To try to gain, you know, because there's some cars that have slicks that aren't really that fast and don't want to race against the pro guys, but they want to run slicks. And I'm cool with that, you know. So I think I'm going to break it by ET and just say, hey, if you're faster than this, you'll be in this class. If you're slower than that, you're going to be in this class.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I liked about the class they had for the Volks Group guys is the way that they had it broken down with respect to you know, the different brackets.
Right. And mine will be very similar to that. It just won't be a dedicated index number that you have to run. It'll still be just a dial-in class.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I mean, I'm excited to see it going. I'm going to try to see if I can make it out there this year, even if I got a flat. It may be cool if I drove out, but who knows?
Hey, Johnny said he'll ride with you. I said, hey, it'd be cool to do the podcast live from the event.
That's it. Well, listen, we've done plenty of things like that before. So yeah, I just looked at it's
Yeah.
an 18-hour drive, so I might ride out there with Johnny, and I might fly home. So who knows?
Yeah.
I might be his road
Yeah.
dog on the way there and bail on the way home. But
Yeah, I've seen that happen before.
yeah, it's a 2-day drive, or if you do it Johnny style, 18 hours on 46 rock stars and no sleep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. He had a good time when he came out.
yeah, he said it was a real nice setup, and everything was pretty good. So I definitely would like to come out there and check it out, just to kind of get the whole vibe for that Texas thing, because I just love the VW scene all over the country. I think it's just super unique, and there's just a lot of really a lot of variety in the scene, and every specific area just has its own kind of vibe, and I like checking it
and
out.
that's what I was talking to Tom Kinney earlier on the phone, and when people ask like, well, what is y'all's race like? Well, it's a drag race, it's a car show, it's a swap meet. We do some things, we have our own little spin on it, the way we do it. Like when you go to the Volks group, like that's such a cool event. It's like everybody's together, big family, everybody's real friendly. They do the dinners and stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. But I did try to drive around, talk to everybody, see how they were doing, see how they liked it, and I haven't been over on the East Coast yet, but I plan to do at least one of those this year, just to go check it out, because yeah, our event was great, but is there a way to make it better? Probably. I don't want to steal people's ideas, but you got to open your eyes to different things.
Yeah.
And these guys are doing killer jobs, Scott Sane and Scott Picaro and Steven and Kathy over on the East Coast, and then JK and Tom and everybody who does everything on the West Coast, that obviously works.
Right.
And so I've talked more to other promoters since doing this, just, hey, how are y'all doing? Like anything I can help you with? You want me to share your deal? Just different, like try to be more supportive, because as putting on the one crazy weekend, like planning anything absolutely sucks.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot.
It's a headache. It's a lot of work. It's stressful. And, so.
Well, and then my favorite thing is everybody just comes up to you and gives you their 2 cents of what they would do differently.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, there's always an opportunity to do another event. Feel free to, hop in and see what you can do.
Right.
Because it takes a lot, and you put this much time and effort and everything into it, and really, it's one of those things where you put your heart and soul into it. People start criticizing it, and you kind of take it personally. It's hard not to take it personally, because it's like
I've tried not to. The more I do it, I try not to take it personally. Like I'll vent to my wife, or I'll call Jason and vent. I'm like, this son of a bitch,
Yeah.
But I try to keep keyword, to keep a pretty level head online, and take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, it's hard to not get defensive when something that it's like, that's my kid, I raised it from nothing,
Yeah.
And, so to tell me I'm not doing it right or whatever. So when you do hear people like, Eric Calabrese and Chad Daly and Paul Logan and JD Curry and all these guys, Pat Downs, are like, hey, dude, y'all did a killer job. Like, that was awesome. That's one of the best events I've been to. I'm like, that's why we do it. That's fun.
So
that makes it worth it.
Some of the toughest stuff to get going is the to get people into it, the spectators, the car show guys, because there's you'll sit and watch Street Outlaws and stuff like that, where you actually you start to get to know the characters, and you start to develop people who you like, who you want to see win, and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But it's tough to be able to do that in the VW world, because first, the only place you'll get information like that is in the magazine. And let's be honest, nobody reads the magazines. You know what I mean? it's just not what people do, right? So
Yeah.
um,
And now with YouTube, though, that's made it really cool because now you start seeing more of it. And I'm with you, though. Like, until I started drag racing, it's just 2 more cars going down the strip.
right.
Well, once you start doing it and you're hanging out in pits with people and you start to develop those relationships, then you know every single car that comes up and you're like rooting for them, and even if it's in your same class, you're like hoping that guy wins or whatever, I'm like, it's fun. It's a big family. And, we have our riffs, we all get a little heated sometimes, and then later, come back and, oh, dude, I didn't mean nothing by it, that kind of stuff. But it's a big family, and it's there's nothing like it to me.
No, that's
I can't get away from it.
yeah. I mean, I'm pretty excited to check it out this year. Hopefully, I'll be able to make it down there because it seems somewhat reasonable. I mean, if I know Johnny's got the old Red Dragon, my race car, he's got that at his place because last time I cheesed on the line and broke the trans, but
yeah, you're gonna get that.
yeah, I think it's definitely something that I'd love to. I would love to definitely get out there. I'd love to run my car out there too because I really enjoyed running 8th mile. It's honestly a lot less nerve wracking than quarter mile. Because quarter mile.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens in a short amount of time.
Right.
But in the quarter mile, if you don't have a fast car, when you click 4th, you're just kind of driving.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's like, and if you've got a fast car, you're wringing its neck. And it feels like you might.
And I feel like 8th mile is cool for spectators because you're turning the cars down the track a lot faster.
Yeah.
And I can't talk about all that without I can't sit here and list every single sponsor, but we couldn't do any of this without those guys. We had help from all the big Volkswagen, the aftermarket Volkswagen companies, Hot VWs. We even had other promote JD Curry does his VW Summer Nationals up there in Ohio. He was a big supporter of this event. We have some local people that steadily put, back this kind of stuff because they believe in us, and we couldn't do any of it without them.
Right. No, there's no question that sponsors make a huge difference in, making something like that become a reality. And it's just, making sure that the people that enjoy the event support the sponsors so that they get some dual benefit out of it. It's not just a money grab. You like to see your people get, you like to see your sponsors get supported through that,
Right. And, having the huge payout is great, because it'll help pay for some fuel and stuff. But let's be honest, if you're drag racing Volkswagens and you're trying to do it for money, you're in the wrong sport. Because these things will just suck the life out of you.
Oh, yeah.
So getting a little money back is cool, but nobody's doing it for the money. But even still, to put on one of these events, it takes a lot of time and a lot of money.
Yeah,
and without those people, we couldn't do it.
No, it's pretty heavily involved. But I'm glad that there's people doing stuff like that out there, and it's just guys from nothing that don't have a ton of experience just deciding to put it on because no one else is. You know what I mean? And it's so when we first started it, I did get a lot of that criticism, after that first deal. Yeah.
Well, back in the day we used to do this and, this is how it used to be. And I would just stop them like, hey, if back in the day, how it used to be, and this is how you used to do it worked, why did it die? Why did you let it fall apart?
Well,
so if that obviously didn't work or nobody cared anymore. So let me do it.
Yeah. And part of the challenge is, you want to open it up so you get as much competition as possible. Anybody,
right.
You've always got guys that show up to car shows that just show up for a trophy or show up to the drag race and they try to get a car that's going to be the only one in its class that they can just say that they keep getting trophies, they keep getting first place. But that's not the majority of the people. The majority of people love good competition, love to battle it out. And I think the more people that you have racing, it's definitely more enjoyable spectator wise and everything else.
Absolutely. And that's why you look at a deal like our last event, and I'll use Tom again. He was outgunned. So you look at that as a promoter and go, okay, there's somewhere in between that we can build a class that would be super competitive, but they're just not low 5-second cars. Let's do something for them, because that's still a super fun class to watch.
Right.
It's heads up drag racing. They're side by side. They're still really fast. So there needs to be a spot for them. Otherwise, you start to lose that. People are like, dude, there's no way I'm driving 15, 18, 25 hours to go get my ass kicked. I know I'm not going to win.
Right. No, and everybody wants a competitive challenge.
Yeah, it's good for the spectators. It's great for the racers. It's good all around. So yeah, you have to look at what you're doing and see if it works. And if it works, cool. If it needs some tweaking, then do that.
Yeah, no question. Well, I definitely think it's something that I'm glad to see it happening. I know that there's another thing that's going to be happening this year that they just announced. Details are fairly vague on it at this point. I don't know if there's a lot of stuff out for classes and all that stuff, but it's I think they call it the Race of Champions. And what is it?
Yeah, it's World Finals or something.
The World Finals. So that's fairly interesting. But I know that Brian reached out to me and told me that, once they announced it, they already had people calling and trying to plan shipping cars out from all over the world. So we'll see. And that's in December. So that's after your event. So, you can always come down and check that one out.
Well, when he announced it, I'm like holding my breath. And I'm sure, JK and all those other guys are too. We're like, hey, when is this going to be? So I called him. It's like, do you have a date for that? He's like, yeah, it's in December. I'm like, hey, perfect.
Right.
He's like, no, I know not to step on toes. But yeah, so, I mean, that's cool. I hope that's a success, because like I was telling Tom earlier, any drag racing is better than no drag racing. So you want to see all of it succeed, it's great for you too, because it's right in your backyard.
I love it. I love stuff in Vegas, and even for us locals, it's, Vegas is kind of a small town, geographically, but like the drag strip is so far out there. And from where the spectators park, you go through the pits are like 15 acres. So walking across 15 acres to go and watch the racing, and then you just hope there's no oil down, stuff like that. How did you guys fare with respect to, oil downs and all that stuff, which is the biggest complaint that I hear from people with respect to, drag racing Volkswagens?
So with all these cars sitting dormant for so long here, and then, all this new blood that just decided they want to try it, there was a lot of breakage in the beginning. I mean, and most of it was transmission related, because the racetrack that we race on is super sticky. So we had, transmissions breaking and splitting the case and draining the contents of the gearbox right there on the starting line. And it didn't happen just once, it happened several times. So after the first season, I made an announcement. I'm like, hey, and I think we were the first people to do it. And I caught so much crap for it. But I'm like, hey, from here on out, if you're on a slick or a drag radial, I'm requiring a transmission blanket or catch pan.
Yeah.
Because, some of these guys had them, and they would break their gearbox, and you'd see all the fluid in the catch pan, and we could just push the car off and keep going. And the people who complained about it, I had to break it down for them. Like, when you break your transmission and you oil the track, you get your car pushed off and you're gone. They still have to spend all that time cleaning it. Meantime, you're pushing your car in the trailer and you take off and go home.
Yeah.
Well, if that happens 7 times in a race day, that just pushed me back 3.5 hours from getting to go home. I mean, selfishly, I was more worried about me, I'm like, this is ridiculous that we're having to spend this much time cleaning up oil. So we finally started doing engine and transmission catch pans, and then is drastically cut down on oil downs.
Well, it also helps, like if you grenade your car, you can really quickly find out what it was you grenaded. You're not you're
Yeah,
not searching the whole track for the bits and pieces that
right,
shot off the car.
right. Now, I will say that the engine blankets, John at FTD, he does the engine blankets and the transmissions. Those are great. All the catch pans out there are awesome until you throw a rod to the top of the motor,
Right.
and then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The oil's going everywhere anyway, but that doesn't happen all the time. Most of the time for us, it was transmission related, and this has helped. So when I saw Brian say 100% across the board, no matter what kind of car you're driving, what class, whatever, we're requiring oil containment. I'm like, great idea. That's every track, every promoter in the country should start going to that.
Yeah, and what's the and what's a set run for the engine blanket and transmission blanket?
I think John's are around $200 a piece or so.
Yeah.
There's a guy up in Oregon that makes them. The catch pan that kind of covers the whole motor and transmission, and I think he's 200, 250, and it covers both. And a lot of guys were just going and getting, big like turkey frying pans and just self-tapping them up to the bottom of the car or hose clamp or whatever. I mean, I don't care how you do it, and it doesn't have to be the fanciest,
Right.
as long as it keeps oil off the track.
Well, that's the key component.
The cost versus the amount of downtime is a drop in the bucket, and you only have to buy it one time.
Well, that's the thing too. People don't want to get caught up in a lot of the downtime of waiting, because that's when the stands start clearing out. Someone oils down the track, everybody just gets up and starts walking away.
Yep, and that's terrible for us. And these guys drag racing, they want people to watch them.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then it's frustrating when you're sitting back there and you're next to go, or you're already seatbelted in and your helmet on and everything, and kill them. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, you're sitting there.
Get out. You've already kind of killed all your nerves. You've already got all the butterflies out of the way, and you're kind of game mode, and then 30-minute downtime.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man.
Yeah, it's been a huge help. And I know, like the Volks group is doing it now. I noticed Brian posted it. I don't know for sure on the East Coast if they're doing that yet. If not, they definitely should.
Yeah, I think it's for sure something that, makes the racing go a lot easier, a lot quicker, and a lot less downtime, and that makes the biggest difference. So people could just watch back-to-back racing, because really that's what they're there for. It's no different than when people watching an MMA fight and they're locked in a grappling hold for 15 minutes.
Yeah,
everybody starts booing.
Quit hugging each other, man.
Yeah, they want to see action. They want to see action.
Right.
So.
And that's not even limited to just Volkswagens. I think the V8 cars, the no prep guys, I mean everything across the board, from your slowest cars to your fastest cars.
Yeah.
I mean, I think every track and promoter in the country should just bite the bullet and say, hey, if you don't have an engine blanket and transmission, catch pan or diaper or whatever, like, you're not racing.
Now, are you gonna have your car ready for this year with the turbo on it, or what?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
What are you hoping to run with the turbo?
I hope it runs like a high 6, low 7.
Oh wow.
Now that's full interior. Like I've got carpet, headliner, roll bar, all 3 seats, bumpers. It's a heavy car, but I want it to just be. And I still take my kids to baseball and softball practice and pick them up from school and everything in it.
Yeah.
I want it to be a full functional street car and be able to haul ass.
Well, and that's always been kind of my thought with turbo or power adder cars for street use. It's like you can drive them civilized if you can control yourself, and on the street just kind of cruise them around, and then when you want to get on it, you can really.
That's the cool thing now about like this haul tech that I got. Like I could detune the car for street driving.
Yeah.
And it keeps me from getting in trouble, So I'm really excited about it.
Well, cool, man. Well, I'm hoping to see more of it, and we'll make sure that we mention it here on the podcast as we get closer to it and help promote to help you guys get some
Yeah.
people
So
there.
if I can, I'd like to plug. We have a website. It's texasversustheworld.com.
Okay.
I'm going to start adding the sponsors. As we get them, we'll add some pictures from the last event. But I have a sheet on there. If anybody is interested in coming on board and to help support it, I have a whole sheet there with different, price lists and everything of what you get and that kind of stuff too. So
Now, do you guys have a host hotel where everybody's staying?
I didn't last year. Everybody kind of stayed at the same one. There's a town nearby in Hutchins, but this year I am going to get a host hotel somewhere. I'm going to go down and pick out whichever one's the best.
Yeah, this last December I did the Hot Rod Power Tour West in my crew cab, and that's one of the things that was really lacking. Like, they didn't have any host hotel information. When you got down over by Irwindale, there's 20 different hotels you could stay at. And there was really, you kind of got to the parking lot and there's a smattering of cars here and there, but
right. And the cool thing about XRP is they allow primitive camping. I mean, they don't have any RV hookups,
right?
But you can bring your motorhome, set up a generator. You can bring your tent, whatever. They're not that strict on it. So when you come in the gate Friday, you don't have to leave till Sunday.
Oh, nice.
So there was a lot of camping, some pretty good partying. I got to sit around, and listen to some good stories,
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's a good time.
Well,
but yeah, if anybody was thinking about it, definitely come out and try it.
And it's September 13th and 14th, 2024, Extreme Raceway Park in Ferris, Texas.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, Texas versus the world shootout. So if you guys got drag cars and you want to bring them out and run against anybody and everybody, that's the spot to go to. So, man, Clint,
yep.
I appreciate you coming on the podcast and taking some time to talk to us about this.
Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out. I had a good time with this.
Yeah, and I think, the closer we get to it, maybe we'll do some follow-up. And if we got, my if any way that I can help, what I can do is maybe get to know some people that are going to be out there racing, doing some stuff, maybe do some roundtable with a couple different racers. And
one of my favorite things one of my favorite podcasts that you've done was when you talked to John Sugar up there in the Volks Group race.
Medford, yeah. No.
Because I've talked to him, great guy. His wife, they're both great people, but I didn't realize that he had been that deep into it for that long.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's stacked for years of
listening to his pedigree of all the wins and the championships, I'm like, this guy
and
is
what's
good.
Insane is he's had that car for so long.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is so cool because I think it was his brother's car.
Yeah.
And
very cool.
It's just a great story when you're able to meet a guy that you see at all the races. You don't really know a lot about him, but you get to do a deep dive into who they are. And that's also the thing that I'd love to do by coming out there and doing the podcast is interviewing a lot of guys that are out there that have been racing for a long time that you don't get to hear their story. So,
right. Yeah. Everybody likes to talk about their car. So.
That's it. And I'm going to do everything I can to get out there this year for sure. So maybe you might see.
Hey, if there's any way I can help, let me know.
You might see me and Johnny out there in the big Let's Talk Dubs, the big dong trailer. So
hell yeah, we look forward to it.
That's it. We're bringing out no big deal about Johnny's car, but the Red Dragon's the one you got to look out for. So
there you go. Yeah, nobody cares about that other one.
Yeah, whatever with Johnny. We're talking about the Red Dragon here. So make sure
he's already got the street.
I mean, listen. Johnny's got to get the Red Dragon prepped and ready to go. But I mean,
right? Yeah. So I talked to him today, and he's like, "Hey, man, when you get ready to do that fuel injection stuff, call me. I'll fly out there."
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Wow, that's cool.
Great,
man.
dude.
Yeah, good guy. Dude. Well, right on. Well, Clint, thanks again for coming on, man. And if people want to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you?
We have Facebook, Texas versus the World VW group, texasversustheworld.com. Any questions they have, we'll send a direct email to my phone. So
yeah, you hit that contact there. Well, cool, man. Well, we'll for sure we'll touch back with you just before the event kicks off, and we'll give it a couple pushes here on the podcast.
Cool. All right, man.
All right. Thanks, Clint.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm sure you guys enjoyed that podcast. If you've got a drag car, get it prepped for September this year. There's a lot of drag stuff coming up this year. Now, the first ones that you're going to have coming up is going to be Drag Day coming up in Irwindale, put on at Buggin, and that's going to be March 10th. You've also got the Volks Group's 2024 events. The first one is going to be taking place at Samoa Drag Strip. It's going to be Memorial Day weekend. And then the next one will be at Medford, and that one's going to be, it's the Ohana Reunion number 2, and that's going to be August 30th through September 1st. So you guys want to get some good drag racing events to check out, you got to be all over this place. Grab a plane, fly out there, check them out. Support your Volkswagen drag racing scene. And don't forget, we've got we've got this event, which is Texas versus the World, and that's going to be September 13th and 14th of this year. And then after that, the one in December, that's going to be the World Nationals Race of Champions here, December 7th in Las Vegas. So lots of Volkswagen stuff happening this year, lots of drag racing, and lots of stuff to get into. So make sure you guys support your VW events. Go check them out. Go to their website, follow their Facebook pages, and let them know you heard of them on Let's Talk Dubs. So until next week, guys, later.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen.